Your cybersecurity solution is here. Introducing Pentester's Advanced Cybersecurity Suite. Ready for peace of mind? Try it for free. No credit card required. Pentester.com.
You know, like whatever I did. I cooperated with the government, but my brother didn't, and they should have went. They should have went to his funeral, and they didn't. DMs on Instagram and Facebook of like fake accounts with like pictures of rats, and they write nasty things in the comment that's nasty, but they don't reveal themselves because basically they're all punks. Go back in history to look at royal families like the monarchies of Europe. They all intermarry, keep the bloodline and the money and the power within their family, and that's sort of. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the show, all your Patreon members, and also my name is Anthony Ruggiano Jr, and I want to welcome everybody to Reform Gangsters. And if you like my content, please hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. Also, don't forget about Patreon. I have a lot of new content, on my Patreon. Please check it out. It only costs $1 to get on. And a lot of good stuff is on there, a lot of good videos, a lot of well-made videos. And also don't forget about my store. I have a store that has a lot of good items. Father's Day is coming up in June. So, check out the hats, the shirts, and check it out. I wear my stuff now in airports, and I'm starting to get recognized with my shirts. I got recognized in Disney. I got recognized at the airport flying to Florida, flying up to New York, or flying back to New York. I got recognized. And a lot of people stop me now when I wear my Reform Gangster t-shirts, and they ask me, like, what's that? And I tell them it's my podcast. And they go, oh, we got to check it out. Where do I find it? So please check out my store. As we all know, my brother passed away this week, unfortunately, my younger brother, Albert. And, it's been a kind of a long week. I want to thank everybody sent their condolences. I mean, it was overwhelming. I got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of condolences from, people that follow me on my social media. I want to really thank everybody. My nephews and nieces had a GoFundMe, and they raised more than enough money to have a beautiful funeral for my brother, which I commend them. They did a great job. My nephews and niece, they did a really, really good job for my brother. I got a chance to say goodbye to him. I'll reveal that I was there at the funeral. I was in Ozone Park. I was there early in the morning before the general public showed up. Yes, there was FBI agents in the lobby, hanging out in the lobby when I was there. I stood a while. I got to say goodbye to my brother, which was really nice. And a lot of people showed up. I wasn't there, but my family told me a lot of people showed up. A lot of old friends showed up. It was a really nice turnout, which was very, very nice to hear. But I don't focus on negativity, but I think about people, and I appreciate everybody that was there. But there was a couple of people that weren't there that I feel personally should have been there. And this goes back to that mob mentality, that mob nonsense. There's people out there in Ozone Park and in New York that owe everything they have to the Ruggiano family, to my father, Fat Andy, my brother Albert, and myself. My father had a crew, my brother had a crew, I had a crew, but we were all with Tony Lee and Fat Andy. And a lot of people out there, that have homes and lives and livelihoods and money because they hung out with us. We put them on the map. They know who they are, Frankie, Big Freddie, Bobby, Tony. You just know who you are. You just know who I'm talking about, and I know you just watch my videos, and I don't, and I'm not trying to, I'm just hurt. Like whatever I did. I cooperated with the government, but my brother didn't, and they should have went. They should have went to his funeral, and they didn't. Shame on them. And that just goes to show you the unloyalty in the mob today. Maybe someone gave an order for them not to go to the funeral, and they followed it like, little minions that they are. But they should have had enough balls and enough respect for my father and for my brother to go to the funeral, to get in a car and drive down. I don't care if they lived in Pennsylvania or in New Jersey. I had people fly in from Florida. I had people fly in from Michigan. People found a way to the funeral, and I just want to give them a shout out to say that, I might have cooperated, but I'm not a punk, and shame on them. Shame on you people for not going to my brother's funeral, for old time's sake. Shame on you. That's all I have to say. And I'm sure, a couple of them, because I get a lot of, not a lot, but I get these DMs on Instagram and Facebook of like fake accounts with like pictures of rats. And, they write nasty things in the comment is nasty, but they don't reveal themselves because basically they're all punks. So they don't reveal themselves. So they have fake accounts. So if you're going to do that in the future, put your name to it. Put your name to it. Let's put your name to it. At least I know who you are. I don't care. Put your name to it. Don't be a little weasel and just put pictures of rats without, a name there, with a fake name or a fake account. You could tell me who you are. What are you afraid that when I do come to the neighborhood, because I do come to the neighborhood, I may bump into you one day. So you're worried. Or maybe you didn't come to the funeral because you thought I would be there and you wouldn't know what to do because you don't have the balls to throw a punch at me. I don't know, whatever, but whatever. I'm just venting right now. But anyway, I just want to say thank you again for everybody that did attend. And I want to say thank you again for everybody that sent their condolences. And I want to say shame on you people that didn't come that should have came. And that's all I have to say about the matter. May my brother rest in peace. He was a great kid, a good guy. He suffered at the end, and now he's in peace. So, now he's with my mother and my father, and hopefully they're smiling down on us.
Attention all realtors, check out listingtiger.com. Revolutionize your real estate listings with AI-powered descriptions that sell properties. Check out listingtiger.com. Use code MAGICLIST2024 for the first month free.
Hello, AH. Hello, Amber. Good morning. Welcome to Reform Gangsters. Thank you for being Patreon members. If you have any questions or want to talk about something, please go right ahead. Feel free. Hello.
Okay, perfect. Hi.
Nice to see you too.
Oh, good. Yeah. I hate when you're on a Zoom meeting and you can't see anybody. I feel like I'm talking to a wall.
Your Led Zeppelin shirt. I saw
thanks.
I saw them 3 times in person.
Really?
Yes, really. In the 70s.
I don't even have to ask how good they were. Man, I'm jealous about that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, did Neil get you tickets for that?
No, Neil didn't get me tickets for that. We had our own tickets. We had a scalper. My father had a guy that got tickets, so we got tickets from him. Yeah. No, Neil just got me tickets for Frank Sinatra.
Yeah. Well, I remember you saying that was a great show.
Yeah, very good.
So I have many questions, so I'm going to limit myself to one question per session. So I know you said your dad described Carlo Gambino as the smartest person he ever met. And I've looked at the FBI files. I'm a historian, so I'm a complete nerd, and I'm really interested in all of it. And according to Carlo's file, there were several times that he was almost deported. Like they were really close, and then he avoided it. He'd go into the hospital, things like that. And he had those 3 things, right? that make a good boss. He was good with people and on the street and with business. How did he get it so wrong with Paul Castellano?
That's a good question. So I believe this is how my father explained it to me. They believed they thought they were royalty. So they married first cousins. They all married first cousins, and that's
that's right.
If you go back in history to look at royal families like the monarchies of Europe, they all intermarried to keep the bloodline and the money and the power within their family, and that sort of was their mentality. Their Sicilian mentality was that they were royalty and they wanted to keep the money and the power in the bloodline. Like Carl and Paul married each other's first cousins. They were all related.
Yeah.
So at the time when he was dying, he wanted to keep the power and the money in the family in the same bloodline, and he nominated his cousin, his first cousin, which was also his brother-in-law, was his first cousin. So it was all a power. It was all because they thought they were royalty, and he wanted to keep the bloodline and the money and the power in the Gambino family. And he also knew that O'Neill would respect his wishes because he was old school, and the boss is the boss is the boss. And I guess he felt that he could do that and there wouldn't be no repercussions. He didn't know anything about what was lurking with John Gotti at that time. Nobody knew about the tapes, which would come later on and all that stuff. But I remember when that happened, and there was a lot of disappointed people in the Ravenite that O'Neill didn't push Paul aside. He respected, but that's what it was basically, to keep it in the family. I mean, that's why he nominated Paul.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I said I was going to ask one question, but it reminds me.
You can ask another one.
I know there was more than one person who used the word sexual degenerates about the Gambinos. Is it because they married first cousins, do you think?
Some people would use that term, that they married first cousins. I mean, but that was, not that in Europe, that was standard procedure at one time.
Yeah.
I mean, that especially when it came to royal bloodlines. I mean, they met. Like the English monarchy, they married German first cousins. They married Austrian first cousins. Yeah, so I mean, but in the United States, it's frowned upon. So yeah, they would call them sexual degenerates because they intermarried first cousins. I mean, first cousins. I mean, my first cousins are very close to me, so I don't know. It's kind of touchy situation. But that's the reason why in the United States they would call them sex degenerates, because they married their first cousins.
Okay, that makes sense.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Mental health and addiction go hand in hand. I mean, mental health. A lot of people, that have mental illness, self-medicate and become, and develop, dependency on drugs. It's like where I work. Like today, most of the treatment centers nowadays are dual diagnosed treatment centers, and that's mental health and addiction. Like my facility is dual diagnosis. My detox is dual diagnosis. We handle mental illness patients and people that are addicted to alcohol and drugs, or both. So yeah, they go hand in hand, especially today. And a lot of people are suffering out there. My brother suffered with mental illness. A lot of people I know, friends of mine, suffer with mental illness. I'll tell you, most of my patients that come through the detox, I would say 80% of them are dual diagnosed patients, have some kind of severe anxiety or depression, or there's so many initials now for everything, but a lot of them have some kind of mental disorder. I would say at least 80% of them deal with both, especially anxiety and depression. Those are the two biggest ones. Anxiety is probably the number one issue that I deal with, besides addiction, because I know a lot of patients come to me and tell me their anxiety's off the charts, and I send them to the nurse, and a lot of severe anxiety. I mean, there's a lot of resources out there. You know, it all depends on insurances and, you know, and what state you're in and what kind of facilities you want to go to. I mean, in Florida, we have what they call the Baker Act, where you could have someone, you know, you could call 911 and they'll send a wellness unit to your home. And if someone's having a psychotic episode or you know, we're going to harm themselves, they'll Baker Act them, they call it, and they'll bring them in for 72-hour observation and try to medically stabilize them. That's the whole thing. The whole thing is to get medically stabilized. And that's where the issue comes in, because people aren't compliant with their medication, and then their anxiety and depression go off the chart, and then they start self-medicating. And that's the issue. But there's a lot of help out there. You know, you just got to reach out. I mean, there's 800 numbers. There's so many ways now to find help. I mean, if someone wants to find help, they could find it. It's not as bad as it used to be. I mean, it's so now out in the open, and it's so talked about now. I mean, what's the stigma? Who cares what the stigma is? You know, who cares? You know, just come and get help. You know, that's you know, just come. And it's not like it used to be. The stigma isn't as bad as it used to be. And you know, and just come get help.
Be careful giving a historian time to ask questions.
Yeah. You probably know more than me.
Well, you know, I'm not a mob historian, but I've always been interested. And like I said, that's a dangerous thing. There's a lot of FBI files that are really neat on this stuff.
Yeah.
And I know it's often said there are two sides of the Gambinos, two sides of the family. You have the Paul side and you have the Neil side, the business side, I guess.
Neil Della Croce you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was interesting. I think Sammy the Bull said that there were enforcers and there were businessmen, and that he's one of those that was both. It seems to me like Neil was both, that he had a lot of respect, right, across the family.
Yeah, Neil was very well respected. Neil was held in high regard. When Neil could have became the boss in the blink of an eye, when Carlo Gambino died and he nominated Paul, all Neil had to do was declare himself the boss, and that would have been it. I mean, Paul would have stepped aside, the captains would have voted Neil, and Neil had that much power and respect. And not only that, Neil had the best crew. Neil had all the hitters.
Oh, okay.
You know, he had my father, Tony Lee, John Gotti. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on and on. You know, the people that, you know, Neil had the strength. He had the hitters. He had the money. But he was just, you know, he just went along with Carl. You know, and Neil was everything. Neil was a gangster, was an earner. He was generous. Paul was greedy. He was a businessman. But Paul also was vicious too, because he had no problem ordering people to be murdered. Paul Castellano.
Yeah, I heard that. I feel like people don't know that. But one of the things that I've always thought was, you know, he had no issue with Roy DeMeo, it seemed, until the threat of indictments. He
had no issue with having people killed. He had other people killed before Roy DeMeo. He okayed murders before that. I mean, you know, he had no problem giving an order for someone to die or okaying an order for someone to die. Did he do it himself? No. But, you know, whereas Neil, coming up through the ranks, actually committed murders himself. You know, so that's the difference between being a racketeer and a gangster. Paul was a racketeer. Neil was more of a gangster and had the whole package. That's why he was well liked. He was more respected than Paul, because he was more well-rounded as a mob guy.
Yeah. Now, which side would you say that you and your father were on of that, or do you think you guys were in the middle? You were both.
No. What you mean with John Gotti or what Neil?
No. I mean, were you a racketeer or a gangster or both?
Oh, my father was a gangster. I was more of a racketeer. I mean, I have committed acts of violence, but I wasn't a gangster. My father was a gangster. Tony Lee was a gangster. John Gotti, guys, Angelo Quack, Jeannie Gotti, Nicky Carrazza, they were gangsters. because they did, you know, they were big earners, tough guys, killers. They were gangsters. Like Michael Franzese, he was a racketeer, but he would commit, you know, and that doesn't mean you're not going to commit an act of violence. Listen, if you're in that life, they tell you to go commit an act of violence, you have to do it. Otherwise, you're going to have an act of violence committed on you. You know, so even though you might be a racketeer, you still have to be capable of committing an act of violence if you're called upon to do that. So it's like a slippery slope.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And I also, once again, I want to thank everybody for their condolences. I want to thank everybody that actually showed up at my brother's funeral. Lots of love to you. And for those that didn't come, you know who you are. Shame on you again. And I hope to hear from you. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Reform Gangsters. Don't forget, if you like my content, please hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. Check out my Patreon. Like I said earlier, I have a lot of new content on it. And check out my store. I got really cool Fat Andy t-shirts and mugs and hats. Check it out. Have a good day. If you're enjoying my show, please join my Patreon. Ask your questions live. And please join my Patreon at reformgangsters.com.